Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I'm coming to you from Belize, from the Alaya, Belize, in San Pedro, Belize. You can see the city behind me, these people here. Tried to find a relatively quiet place to film this. Sorry, I forgot the windscreen for my microphone, so it may be a little bit blowy. Anyway, if you enjoy things like scuba diving and seeing people dive with sharks and things like that, definitely look at my Whole Nuts and Donuts channel, which is a sister channel to Dr. Know-It-All, where I do adventure stuff. And after we get home and I have a chance to edit it together, we just went on our first 2 dives this morning and tons of sharks. It was crazy. Really wild. I've never seen so many. I've dove a lot of times and never seen so many. But anyway, I figured I would go ahead and film this from this beautiful location. While I talk about good news, bad news, I was debating about which one to do first. I guess I'll do the bad news first. The bad news is that it has become very evident that China is, BYD in particular, is putting out a lot of fake numbers. They are actually building cars by the tens of thousands and registering the vehicles and then dumping them in giant fields. In fact, the thumbnail of this video will probably be a screen grab of that. Of course, I will put a link to this and the other video in the description as well, the other source as well, sorry, in the description. But it's really worth noting this because it apparently also it is something that China has a tendency to do. They had a previous sort of, the person in the video was calling it a Ponzi scheme. I don't know if that's quite exactly what it is, but anyway, that they were doing things with rideshare, with bicycles and also rideshare EVs, where they just pump out these vehicles that people think are being used, and because of the opaqueness of China, that people don't actually know what's going on in China, you've got a situation where people can just pump and dump these things, literally dump them by the tens of thousands into huge fields. And when that happens, of course, people think that China is being environmentally amazing and that they're at the very forefront of electric vehicles, and they're producing and not just producing, but people are buying more vehicles than any other country in the world by a long shot. But the issue, of course, is that if they're just registering the vehicles and then dumping them in fields, these numbers are false. And as opposed to most other countries in the world, where if something like that happened, eventually news would catch up with you and you would probably go to jail about it because you would be defrauding your stockholders. But for a company like BYD that doesn't have to do that because of the opaqueness of China's politics, they are able to get away with just creating these garage sales, where they say that what they're doing is they're actually selling these vehicles to consumers, but they're not. They're putting them in a field and they're just dumping them. And of course, aside from the illegality, but also the ickiness of doing this, is of course the incredible environmental damage it's doing. Because of course, electric vehicles, the one downside to electric vehicles is that they are more difficult, they're more taxing on the environment to create than gas vehicles. Over the course of several years, since you don't have to use gasoline to fill up the vehicles, it balances out, and electric vehicles become much, much better for the environment over the lifetime of the vehicle. But of course, if you just create that vehicle and you create the battery, which is very chemically intensive, and then you put it in a field, that means that you've created that and you've gone to the effort of mining all of that material, constructing all of the batteries and everything, and then you're not utilizing them, so they're very, very taxing on the environment, much more so than a gas engine car. And then on top of that, of course, if you're just leaving them to rot in a field, those cars, as they degrade and the batteries rot and things like that, you've got a bunch of toxic chemicals in the batteries themselves, not to mention the paint, not to mention all of this other stuff. That all is going into the environment as well. So it's a pretty awful situation. Of course, I don't have a way of going to China and checking on this myself, so you have to believe what you see from the videos and from other sources. But this does seem to be a pattern that Chinese manufacturers have done in the past, including with bicycles and with rideshare EVs before, and BYD is doing that now. So all of this is just to say that what you need to do as a skeptical investor, among other things, and again, this is not investment advice, do your own research, all of that good stuff, but you should definitely look into this if you're a BYD investor or a potential BYD investor. And then beyond that, you should, if you think about China being at the forefront of all this stuff, maybe there aren't as much as people might think. Okay, so that's the bad news part of things. The good news part of things is that It's been coming out recently, and in fact, in the last couple of days, more countries have been added to the list. But there are FSD beta testers in many countries in Europe, and now also in South Korea, in Japan, in Taiwan. There are beta testers around the world at this point, and that is amazing news in its own right, but even more amazingly is that we're now seeing in Australia as well. We're seeing FSD beta testing in right-hand drive countries. In other words, for most of the population of the world, of course, you sit on the left-hand side of the vehicle, the right-hand side is the passenger side, and you drive on the right-hand side of the road. But for countries like United Kingdom, Japan, Australia, I'm probably missing some other ones in there, but anyway, there are a number of countries that are right-hand drive countries, so you sit on the right-hand side of the vehicle, the left-hand side is the passenger side of the vehicle. Every time I watch Ted Lasso, it blows my mind when they get in the car. I don't know. I know this intellectually, but just when I watch it, I see the people get in the car, I'm always like, well, it's the wrong side. But anyway, that is incredibly good news because, of course, full self-driving has been trained entirely in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, which are all left-hand drive countries. And to be able to transfer from left-hand to right-hand drive, I always considered was going to be a major hurdle for full self-driving beta in order to be able to envelop the world, to be able to drive anywhere in the world. I was like, that is going to be a really, really tough ask because of the fact that everything's different, right? You know, Chuck's left-hand turn in some other country would be, Bobby's right-hand turn or something like that in the United Kingdom. I don't know. But anyway, so you're shifting everything. All of the very complicated maneuvers that you have to do are backwards from the way they are in the rest of the world. And so I was like, that is going to be incredibly difficult. Now, I want to caveat this, of course, with these are the numbers of vehicles on the roads. Actually, interestingly enough, Australia's got like 11, I think. So that's got a lot, and could be just because it's a relatively unpopulous country and so a little bit easier to test. I believe South Korea has 10. Most of the rest of the countries have like 1 or 2 testers, and this is including most countries in Europe, including Lars was very happy to see that in Denmark there is one now too, so he's really excited to see that. But there are a lot of countries that are represented, but we're talking about 1 or 2 up to a small double-digit number like 10 or 11 vehicles. So these are test vehicles that Tesla's engineers are using to test out the software. But that's the first step you have to do before you can release that to the larger public and start letting there's going to be, the European OG testers, there's going to be the Australian OG testers, there's going to be people like Holmars, like K10, like Chuck Cook, and on, who are, and Dirty Tesla, of course, all those guys. Anyway, there will be people like that who will be the original testers for these countries, and they are going to get, I hope, a lot of attention when they show this. But what I'm personally most interested in is when I see the first testers on opposite side, on right-hand drive, countries, with those people start doing tests and we can actually witness what is going on there. It's going to be amazing. Certainly in Europe and everything, every country has its own uniqueness. I'm in Belize right now, right? Here we are. This is the country of golf carts, and sadly this country is all, I love the fact that it's golf carts, not the country, but so this is a key. This is called Ambergris Key, which is basically just a very long island, which is a barrier. And actually, if I back up back here, you may just be able to see behind me is the whitewater. That's actually the second largest barrier reef in the world behind Australia. So that's where we were diving. The water temperature is amazingly warm here, so a lot warmer than it is in Australia. But so anyway, so this is a key that's out in the ocean, but it's more or less an island. But everybody here drives using golf carts, but they are all gas-powered golf carts. So I was like, this is the kind of thing where having an EV revolution in golf carts would be really cool someday too. So certainly there are electric golf carts, and certainly it would be a lovely thing to be able to do if this, it would just be better for the environment, of course, not to be driving gas golf carts around ultimately. But regardless of that, every country is different, was what I was saying. This country has lots of very narrow roads, lots of huge, gigantic speed bumps that FSD would probably fail on right now. In fact, our taxi driver was driving us from the airport to the dock where we took the ferry across to get here from the mainland of Belize. And I was like, oh my gosh, I said to misinformation, I was like, the FSD would fail in this country right now, because every 50 meters or so there's a gigantic bump, speed bump, and you better darn well slow down, because these are not the kind you can just roll over at like 30 or 40 miles an hour. So anyway, really interesting. I love this country. This is my first time visiting here. I absolutely love it. We're going to see Simon tomorrow, who is actually the person who I've always wanted to come here, but he was like, he's one of my fans on YouTube and Twitter, and so anyway, he was like, why don't you guys come here and see what it's like? And we were like, well, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So anyway, so we have loved our time here. It would be amazing to see electric golf carts here, but it would also, of course, I would love to see Tesla doing full self-driving here as well. It's a small country, so that's not going to happen anytime in the very near future. But what I'm saying is that we're seeing more and more evidence of these cars being tested in different environments. Narrow roads like in Europe, weird speed bumps in Mexico. I can't remember the name of it, but they're basically square speed bumps that you have to be super careful about going over. So every country has its own uniqueness, but the biggest thing in my mind is the switch from left-hand drive to right-hand drive, and how amazing it's going to be when we see the first beta testers, the actual ones, not the employees of the company, but the first beta testers who are actually driving on the opposite side of the road from where it was trained. That's going to be an amazing moment. Don't know how long that's going to take, but it's super exciting. On the bad end of things, and I'm going to turn around here so you can see the Alaya Hotel back there. It's beautiful. If you want to come, and by the way, here's some dive boats and stuff. We went with Chuck and Robbie's dive shop. This is Belize Pro Divers back behind us. But anyway, look how pretty that is. So you can look at that prettiness, and sorry about the bad sound. I'll put on the wind muff next time. But again, on the bad end of things, just pay attention to BYD in China and the fact that they may not be giving you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth when it comes to their sales figures and all of that sort of stuff. So good news about full self-driving. It's just amazing to see Tesla making progress and starting to see it in other countries besides the United States and Canada. And in terms of China, just keep a weather eye out in terms of the way that they're announcing their sales figures and stuff. Very disappointing. I'm very sad about that. I would really like to be more excited about China as a leader instead of worried about them lying about all of this stuff. All right, anyway, so I'm here for a week on vacation. There's going to be relatively few videos. Thank you so much for watching this. Obviously, the production value will be a little bit whatever, but you get to see the pretty sights instead. Check out Whole Nuts and Donuts for some scuba diving stuff when we get back. And yeah, in the meantime, do whatever you want to do, like, subscribe, go to the merch channel, whatever. I will see you all tomorrow. I'm going to go get some dinner. All right, bye-bye.